Hi everyone, I'm just showing you a few bits and pieces that I tend to pick up like a magpie. I pick them up on my morning walk and I bring them home. Now I'm not a vandal, I don't take them off the trees, but sometimes they fall on the path and I think, yes, aren't you lovely? So a feather, a bit of fungus, plate fungus. Then we have here, these are palm frond flowers, the bits that fall off. And sometimes I make them into something. See here, I've gotten all kinds of bits and pieces and I put them all together. So have a look whilst you're walking. Here's some lovely leaves that I made into a nice collage. And even bringing leaves and wattle flowers home to dye. I am always using nature in my art. So let us try and incorporate some today whilst we make a nice page for our journal. I'm wanting to use natural materials, some of that lovely stiffened fabric we did the other day. I've cut some lovely gum leaf shapes out. If you're not confident, you can always use a real leaf and trace around it and then cut around that. Now, if you missed our previous episodes, we really did cover stiffening materials and yarns. That yarn off to the left, those trees, that's just wool. And here I'm using a bit of silk, and the green leaves above were organza. And I just used a plain old mix of PVA and water to stiffen the fabric, just so that I could cut these nice crisp shapes out. Because I know that you can then adhere different things together, different layers of materials, fabrics and papers. And I'm really into the idea that we don't just say I'm into paper arts or I'm into fabric art or I'm into cross stitch. I think all crafts are great and we should try and blend them as much as possible just to expand ourselves and, you know, find something new that we might be interested in. And I have no preconception on what I want to do. I'll just see whatever's handy and make something from that. So papers. Look at this one. And this one here is a homemade kind of paper, and it has bits of bamboo and leaf and things embedded in it. It's much lighter than the other, but I love the idea of it. So textures are lovely in paper, and you can buy it already textured, or you can texturize your own. See this here with this lovely bubbly one. So I keep a little tin, a little old tin there of different textures that I might want to use for different projects, and I can happily marry the paper and the fabric together. Look at that one. That is so leather-like, that paper. I think it is just fabulous. So wherever the texture wants to come, fabric, thread, paper, I'm happy. We'll put that away for now. We've got a few bits and bobs out. You know, we could use some of those things as well. Remember, we did some stiffening of some other materials that were more like a linen that we pulled apart and made into, well, almost like a really rough kind of lace. How about music or, you know, just old pages of something? Just sometimes that adds a little extra element, doesn't it? And maybe even those lovely palm flowers. So I've just grabbed a real fine piece of gauzy linen. Doesn't have to be linen. And made sure that it would fit into the page of the book that I'm going to be putting it in. Now I've got a nice plastic placemat down, and here I'm going to use the linen, and I'm going to use some Mod Podge this time, putting a little bit in a container. There we go, a little bit of dilution, a little bit of a mix with a paintbrush, just to get it into a nice consistency. And then we'll paint it onto our piece of linen. Well, it doesn't have to be linen. It can be, well, any kind of background. It's just something light enough so that I'm using fabric as the background, but something light enough that it won't be too heavy by the time we add a few layers of other things. That's the main thing. But you might want a paper background and add cloth to it. You might want a cloth one and you add paper. You can laminate up in different layers all kinds of things. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just making sure this is wet, and I have, you know, as I'm doing it, it's sort of adhering almost. It's like suction because it's wet. It is flowing down through the fabric and applying itself to the plastic background, which I can then peel off once it is dry. All right, so there's my piece of gauzy linen. Now, what's the next thing I want to put down? Okay, I'm going to use this lovely bit of map. So yeah, although I've wet that, I'm going to wet that again because this is quite thick compared to other things. And I'll put some on the back of it here just to make absolutely sure it's going to stick and down. And then yeah, then I'll put some more of the glue water mix on the top. Now what I have here is tissue paper. You can buy these very cheaply from cheap shops, all different colours, you know, wrapping paper. It's very, very fine, and I thought it's see-through, and you can really layer these things up. They look great. Look better too when you wrinkle them up like I just did, and then pull them out. Flattish, but you know, with the wrinkles still there. And little bits of that can look quite good. Now I have no plan. I really don't know how this is going to do. I have not made one previously and thought, oh yes, that works well. I'm just going off the cuff here. With you, I'm experimenting and we'll just see. So this is a sort of a dusky pink colour. And I thought, okay, there's a bit of pinkish kind of colour in the map. Let's try that. A few little strips that I just tear off there. Now the one I've picked up now is another bit of tissue, but it's a nice goldy colour, so it's got a bit of shine, it's got a bit of oomph. It's a little bit more solid than the pink see-through tissue paper, so I'm just adding some little torn off bits of it as well, just to see what it does. Don't know. Doesn't really matter. These are all bottom layers. If you think of it like that, you don't try and make it perfect. It doesn't matter. You'll add things to it, and then in the end, you might cover the bits that you don't like. So don't worry. Just keep adding. Here I'm adding some nice beigey white colour. Same thing. I'm just making it nice and, you know, bunched up and wrinkled, and then over some bits. You see, and as I add always adding that mixture of, well, in this case, Mod Podge and water, I am, can you see how it's adhering to it? It's making it see-through. It's sort of developing these fine graduations of colour over what we've already added. So it's very interesting. So a little bit of glue before, glue with water, then whatever you're putting down, and then a little bit more on the top. So that's what I'm planning. Here, I'm getting out now some of the organza that I previously stiffened, finding some of the things that I've already done like that out of fabric, and I'm going to add them. So here we go. I'm adding the organza because you can see through it, so it's a really good background. See, I can still see the map underneath it. And it'll all look different as it dries, but you know, this is part of the experiment, isn't it? So what next? Let's have some of this lovely paper. It's sort of a handmade kind of paper. It's got bits of, is it called banana paper? I don't know, I can't remember. But it has little bits of fibrous kind of material in it. So same thing, bit of glue underneath, bit of glue on top. When you mix the water and the glue together, PVA, fabric glue, whatever, it is a glue and it's also a sealer. So it's great for before and after, underneath and on top. I've just added a little bit of that light pink on top of that, and now I'm adding some of the whitey cream colour. And can you see how when you add that, it sort of makes it see-through? And we're going to get graduations of colour. It's not going to be so obvious that we've added all of these different thicknesses and colours in there. I'm hoping for a good result, but honestly, I don't know. But I'll just keep adding. See, I'm trying to break up those strong leaves at the top by adding some lighter layers on top of the see-through tissue paper. I'm just trying to send them a little bit more into the background, I think. Now, what other bits have we got? Okay, well, I had cut out that lovely silky leaf. It's a greeny blue, and that shot organza that was a gold and blue. Just going to add them too at the top. And once again, it's just the same. These things are all pretty light, so they can easily be attached. I'm just trying to figure out whether I want it on top of the green or in a space or what I'm thinking. And maybe a little bit over the edge. So there, that's what I've decided. You can move things around. And there, that one on top. Whoop. And I'm just experimenting with that, thinking, well, it's pretty see-through. Maybe I can put it like that so that it's over top of that. And we'll still see. But, you know, everything is an experiment. We'll see what happens once it's all dry. So everything's looking a little bit busy at the moment. You know, we got some dark colours. I'm just thinking, let's try and make it into one thing a little bit more by going over some areas. So here's that lightish pink colour again. We'll pop it somewhere and just try and end up with a lovely background kind of fabric that's an amalgamation of all those things that we're trying. And then we're going to let it dry, and we'll see tomorrow what it turns out like. And then maybe we'll add some other bits. But this is all about making a background from different bits and just ideas about how you can use fabric and paper together. Can you see that as we add more and more little layers, it's making it less obvious? So at the moment I am grabbing a leaf, an actual leaf that I've collected on my walk, and I've used a little bit of the watered down Mod Podge and glue, and I thought, oh, it's not really going to do it, I don't think. So I've used a stronger dab of glue underneath. And then I'll end up weighting it down with some plastic on top. So I'm thinking, you know, by tomorrow it'll be dry and we can have a look and see whether it worked. It's always worth an experiment. Here it is. And the plastic has come off. It's dry. And it's all in one piece like that. I don't know how it's going to come off this, but I'm going to try. I'm going to use something very fine just to get it started on the edge there. Right, here we go. There. Can you see? Alright, that's what we ended up with. Now it's still pretty fine. You can see here, that's the fabric we had. And yeah, this isn't completely stuck, but it's sort of softened it a bit. So I think that would make easy stitching now. I don't know if you can pick this up, but I found some bits of grass, you know, just things like this. See them? And I just sprinkled that on the top with a bit of the Mod Podge watered down glue. So I like that as it is pretty well, but I'm sure we could certainly do something on the top. Now, what did we have out that I liked? I liked this. Still like that. Don't want to obscure the bits that we liked. But what could we do? I don't know. A little bit of gold tissue that we used, but you don't see it as much here when it's covered over, but here we've got little bits of that gold, and this is a thicker one here. Oh, really, I don't know. So much of it is nice. I don't want to cover it up. Maybe up here somewhere, somehow. So I'm planning to stitch that down. I don't think I need to do too much more. You know, because this is paper and everything, we can write on this. We could stamp on this. We can do plenty of things. Stitch through it. Glue to it. See? But I think that's quite effective so far. So I would be inclined to now just get maybe some thread out. Like I say, I like to mix things up a little bit. We could easily have painted, but creating this wash of different coloured tissue papers has actually been like painting. Still nice and flat. That's where we did another page. So, and that's one we just stitched through. Ew, how are you going to look? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That really is quite delicious. I can see that a lot of our map has been obscured, but enough of it is there. See, poking through. That's all we needed. So I'm going to start now with a needle and one single strand of cotton or stranded DMC embroidery thread, whatever you've got. And see how I did a knot underneath. I came up near the stem and I went out at an angle, just similar to the veins on a leaf. And I'm going to use that to attach that leaf there. Speed this up a bit. I'll go down one side and then I'll come back up the other side. Just like that. A little bit of sewing just adds that third dimension. It adds that little bit extra, and these are simple stitches. You can do more complicated stitches if you wished. Like I actually did do a couple of French knots there whilst I was passing. Here I'm just going to do a little running stitch down the centre of that ghostly leaf in behind. Just to pick out that central stem there. And once I have finished, I'll take the needle through to the back and then I'll just do a couple of stitches on top of each other to end off. Now let's have a look at this solid, beautifully textured piece of cardboard. I've decided I couldn't decide where to put it. It's obscuring so much, so I'm cutting a leaf shape out of it and just allowing that to be sort of like a frame. So I like the idea of that. It's put some of that in but allowed the rest to show through. And what I'm doing now is just using some simple crosses. And I'll do one stitch on the diagonal and one stitch on the diagonal back over top of it. And what I'm doing is attaching that lovely gold textured piece of cardboard, that frame that we've made, onto our cloth background. And I'm not being too precious about it being in a straight line or all the same size or anything. I'm just making messy crosses because I enjoy it. I enjoy it so much. I'm going to go completely outside that frame and do a few more onto the background as if they've sprinkled outside the edge, and just do a few leading down there. Now ending off that thread again, and I might even grab another thread. Here you can see I've grabbed an aquarry thread, and I've done the same on the other side with some crosses. And I've also used some of my palm flower fronds. I think you can see here I've left that little slit there, and I have pushed through some of these. Now that could just stay like that, or I can just couch, you know, just a couple of stitches here and there to keep that down, even if it's just a cross that we have here. I've done crosses down here, done a straight stitch there, just a long stitch across, a couple of French knots there. So not a lot of stitching, and you really don't have to do a great deal to finish this off. And I think, you know, when we can just use a glue stick and glue it in like that, and she'll be ready to go. But I think that's pretty. Well, I'll finish this off. I'll do a little couple of stitches, and then what is it suggesting to me? Well, I've still got the map. I've got all of this green, you know, and what it's reminding me of is, you know, with the map, it's like, you know, a walk through the forest. So maybe I'll even write something there that reminds me of that. We'll see. Okay. So I'm just going to do a little stitch here over you to keep you where I wanted you. Okay, and then I'm going to do another one here a little bit further down and across. And we'll slip underneath here and just get some in there too. And it reminds me that when I like to walk, I like to collect things. And I should get out in amongst nature more, because I really do enjoy it. There we are. So like I said, you could stamp on that, you can stitch on it, you can paint it, you can glue it, you can do so many different things. And I love the idea that we're amalgamating cloth and paper to make something nice. Right, I'm just going to get an ordinary glue stick and glue that in. I like the idea that we get the raggedy bits off the edge. Nice. And walking through the forest, or walking with the forest. And if we just let that stick, think we could add a bit more on this side. Why not? And that's it, completed. Another little page for our book. I like the concept. I like the idea. It's reminding me of good times walking with the forest. If you've enjoyed watching this video and the process, don't forget to press like and subscribe to my channel. I always try and do something just that little bit interesting for you. So my name's Tracey. Art Fibre Stitch is my business, and thank you for watching. All my links are below, and I really hope to see you next time.